Characters from every corner of the galaxy unite as Skyone feels the force of Star Wars.
This program contains some strong language.
My...
Keys, cell phone, pager. You want to tell me what we got over here? Come sit down here. You can grab your keys and get on your way.
Hello. Of course I will. I am C-3PO, Human Cyborg Relations, and this is my counterpart, R2-D2. Our mission today is to bring you the ultimate Star Wars experience. It's an epic tale, so I have enlisted some help from the galaxy's biggest stars, the man behind the Force, and many of our makers, some of whom have never been seen before. Yes, R2, most exciting.
It hit the world like nothing has ever done in the history of the cinema.
I was totally transported by this extraordinary film.
Use the Force, Luke. I have no idea what the Force is.
It's as deep or as shallow as you, the viewer, want to make it.
I am your father.
Honestly, I am.
Oh, that's us.
It was just impossible to resist.
It's absolutely brilliant.
It was just a disaster.
You're doomed.
I just saw it and I knew who Yoda was.
There is no underwear in space. There is gaffer tape.
Admiral Akbar. Looks like a teacher I had at infant.
Jabba the Bada. Jabba Wanga.
I was amazed.
I mean, they've reinvented the history of cinema.
Well, even with my communication skills, I found that hard to understand. Fascinating, but perhaps we should go back to the beginning. It was a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
You got to remember that in the 70s, when Star Wars came along, everything was being wound down. It was bleak economically, it was bleak politically.
I remember seeing the first Star Wars in Belfast, Northern Ireland. There were bombs going off all over the place in Belfast at that time. I'm being totally transported by this extraordinary film.
What you were looking for was not gritty reality. I mean, life was hard enough. You wanted to be taken away to a galaxy far, far away.
It hit the world like nothing has ever done, I think, in the history of the cinema. I mean, there have been plenty of science fiction pictures, but never on this scale.
In terms of impact, there was probably the first talkie, then the first colour movie, and then there's Star Wars. I mean, you're talking about a single shot that's as important as any single shot in the history of motion pictures. It just redefined our sense of scale.
First one that goes through is the original Han Solo ship. That got redesigned so it became this blockade runner, and that model it was 4 feet long. And the ship that follows it in over camera, the Star Destroyer, is only about 3 feet long. So by shooting them separate, you can make them any size you want.
We ended up spending about 6 months on that sequence. We were quite worried about the time frame that we had to do it in, because we were hiring a new group of people that had never worked together before.
A lot of the old-timers, I guess, who had looked at the project before ILM was formed to do it, said, hey, this is impossible.
I think the group of people that we put together for ILM initially would look to anyone on the outside like a kind of weird group of hippies.
It was pretty laid back. The screening room was a bunch of old sofas that people looked like they were going to throw out. So it was pretty funky and pretty easygoing.
After the first year or 18 months or so, there were probably only 2 shots or 4 shots done.
Most of the kids were hired. They hadn't really done a feature film before. So the fact that we weren't going to go over, the fact that it had to come out on a particular date, didn't quite sink in as well as I hoped it would.
I happened to be there one day, and an announcement came in over the PA that said something like, "Congratulations, guys, you've just spent $1 million, and you have 3 weeks to go, and you have 2% of your work done." It was something horrible like that.
And I went down to ILM, and it was just a disaster, because we only had about 6 months left before the film came out, and we had 450 shots that had to be done.
In the last 4 months of the show or so, something happened. And everybody just worked day and night to get the show done, and did it.
You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home.
For me, being a 7-year-old, it wasn't special effects. It was all real.
It just seems so real and so realistic. And then with every film, it got better and better.
You know, Empire Strikes Back, which is my personal favorite, was miles beyond the first Star Wars. In the scope of it and the complexity of the work, just the whole thing went into a whole other level.
AT-ATs.
You can hear the AT-ATs before you see them. You can hear them pounding, and you could feel people in the cinema jumping in their seats.
The raw Bauhaus mechanics of something that looks like an angry cow, but sleeker and leaner and designed just to kill.
The action on the ice planet Hoth is superb. It is the best battle scene, I think, in all of the movies.
Echo Station 5-7, we're on our way.
And the snow speeders were just incredible. The design of the snow speeders, which now look very 70s. They look kind of like Volvos, or they're a bit too boxy and clunky.
It's the first time I ever saw spaceships with character. These spaceships were worn down, they had burn marks on them, they had scars from battles.
All the original movies, everything's kind of dirty and grungy and not really working. So when episode 1 came out with those chrome, beautiful ships, that was very specifically designed to be different from what we'd seen in the original trilogy.
The fact that ILM over the years has pioneered so many techniques that have become industry standards is really impressive.
Working with things digitally allows you to build grand sets very, very cheaply. It allows you to have giant armies. If you want 100 Wookiees coming over the hill, you simply can add in Wookiees.
George loves the technology. Why not? I mean, he and his company practically invented it. I mean, they've reinvented the history of cinema.
This is where the fun begins.
Artu, I suggest a new strategy. It's time we discuss the real heroes of our epic saga. We droids, of course.
As a token of my goodwill, I present to you a gift. These 2 droids.
What did he say? I am C3PO, Human Cyborg Relations, and this is my counterpart, R2D2. A pleasure to meet you.
I didn't want to do it, to be honest. When I saw the robots, it was horrible, uncomfortable. I said, well, sister, you got to do it. We can't find anybody else your size with the strength to be able to do anything with it. So I said, all right, then I'll do it. But I'm not bothered about really doing it because I want to do the summer season, which I'd got booked for Pontins, holiday camp in Torquay.
And frankly, it was awful. I mean, you know, it's part of the job, and I'm not complaining. But on the first day, I was in tears at the end. I'd worn it all day, 7 in the morning to 7 at night. And I was so traumatized by it. I was cut in all sorts of strange and unusual places.
We seem to be made to suffer.
C-3PO was worse off than me.
What did I do to deserve this?
Once he was in it completely, and he couldn't get out. Whereas me, they just took the head off the top and lifted me out.
With all we've been through, sometimes I'm amazed we're in as good condition as we are.
This Star Wars script was completely incomprehensible.
We all thought it was a load of rubbish.
Exciting is hardly the word I would choose.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, who thought of that funny name?
Now that's a name I've not heard in a long time.
I thought to myself, well, Alec Guinness is in this film as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I'm sure he knows a lot more about filming than I know. So if he's in it, it must be worth running the course and see what happens.
R2-D2, you know, was wonderful in the script, but as an acting companion, it was akin to working with a bucket. I was used to being in plays on stage where I said a line, the other character spoke, I replied.
And he said to me once, "Can you let me know when you're going to reply to whatever I've just said to you?" I said, "Well, there's nothing I can do."
He couldn't hear anything I was saying.
I'm inside my robot, and I've got no arms, no eyes, no hands.
The big shock was there was nothing. Where are you going? And I realized that all these sounds would be put in post-production.
All I can do is go.
And it was like a nightmare.
There wasn't a lot I could do of communication-wise. So although we were together on the screen, we were not very together, if you know what I mean. Not like low and hard, anyway.
If you read the original script, the charm is all there. The humor of the robots. I mean, they have more dimension than Luke in many ways.
I'm afraid she's scheduled to be terminated.
No. The droids aren't a major threat. In 2001, the whole point was that the computer went bad and had been programmed to destroy the mission, which is a theme brought back in Alien. In Star Wars, they're lovable.
Thank the Maker. This oil bath is going to feel so good.
The weirdest thing was that you felt something for these non-human plastic metal characters.
Is my head on straight?
C-3PO and R2-D2 seem like real people, even though R2-D2 spoke in beeps, you know. They sort of had real personalities, and I don't think we'd ever seen that before.
I beg your pardon, but what do you mean, naked? My parts are showing. My goodness.
They're not imposing and they're not threatening. They're funny and warm, and so you warm to them.
Wonderful chemistry between the two of them. Quite extraordinary.
They had all the elements that you ever find in a twosome, whether it's a man and wife, a brother and sister.
I've just about had enough of you. Go that way. You'll be malfunctioning within a day, you nearsighted scrap pile.
Tall, good-looking, short, fat and ugly, bright, slightly dim. You know, there was this great sort of contrast between the two.
Don't you call me a mindless philosopher, you overweight glob of grease.
C-3PO I always found was kind of the clown of the series, you know, because he'd always say the wrong thing.
Surrender is a perfectly acceptable alternative in extreme circumstances. The Empire may be gracious enough.
Thank you.
As we are about to turn to the dark side, perhaps you should take a few moments to prepare yourself. After all, we'll be meeting the Dark Lord of the Sith himself. Oh my.
Win a trip to Hollywood and learn to fight like a Jedi in Star Wars Episode 3.
You browse the web on that thing? Because he looks pretty advanced.
What? We're leaving.
Can I put a DVD in him?
There you are. Thank goodness you're still fully functional. Yes, we have a great deal to show you, so do try and keep up. Looking back at some of the fearsome characters we've had to confront, it's a wonder we're still in one piece. I even thought our masters were doomed, for sure.
Everyone loves a good villain, and Star Wars has got some of the best.
The baddies, for some reason, get the better outfits, you know.
It would have been nice to be a villain. I get gravitas.
You really think that's a wise decision under these stressful times?
You're far too trusting.
What?
You're far too trusting.
That's good villain acting.
Before I got cast as Anakin, I was a fan and loved Boba Fett. He was definitely my favorite character. He had this badass, beaten-in armor and cool gadgets.
I said to George, I know what's going to happen. Boba Fett's going to take off that helmet, shake out the hair, and it's my mother.
When you pull this down, I could track up to 30 spaceships at one time. And I think that's pretty cool.
He's all yours, bounty hunter.
My lines in the film, I have to say, as you wish.
Put Captain Solo in the cargo hold.
And then the other one is, what if he doesn't survive? He's worth a lot to me.
He's no good to me dead.
I think that's about it. And the fourth one must have been, as I fall into the pit.
One of the basic rules of storytelling is your story is only as good as the villain, because it really does determine the whole gravity of the piece.
The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
I do not believe the Sith could have returned without us knowing.
Hard to see the dark side is.
What is a Sith? I'm often asked that. They were a sect who clearly were the opposite of the Jedi.
It's impossible to locate the ship. It's out of our range.
Not for a Sith. This is my apprentice, Darth Maul.
His fights were that kind of makes you sit on the edge of your seat and go, wow.
Go! Tell them to take off!
George was adamant about the fact that lightsabers are like 40 pounds. They're like Excalibur. You can't take one hand off. It would drop to the ground. And so to see the prequels now, they're spinning them around and doing backflips and, you know, passing them over their shoulders.
Well, in the first three films, you're seeing experienced Jedi at the height of their power, fighting to the best of their form. And then you get to episode 4, and it's quite a bit later. Obi-Wan's an older man.
I looked at the old films and thought that they needed to be dragged up into the 21st century. They were too disciplined, so I wanted to get rid of all that.
It's intense, it's fast, and you can see it. I hate seeing movies where you're seeing the guys jumping around and it's cut and you see the foot moving and then you see a reaction, and it's really nice to actually see what has been done, and I think that's what's so appealing to the fight.
The thing about Darth Maul is that I really found him a little bit monosyllabic. I quite like my villains chatty.
I don't know why he says so few lines. I think maybe it's something to do with shyness.
Lord Maul, be mindful. Let them make the first move.
Yes, my master.
It's basically my voice, but just a bit gruffer, because George's direction was, Peter, just make it sound, can you make it sound evil? Very evil.
At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have revenge.
Do you know, I could probably do it more convincingly if we had some, like, you know, some lipstick, some black marker pen and some Brazil nuts to put on my face.
I kind of wish we saw more of him. He got so little screen time, but everyone loved him.
Darth Maul was an early apprentice. He didn't last long, the Emperor. He didn't care. There's always another apprentice around the corner, which is his philosophy.
The Sith and the Jedi are similar in almost every way, including their quest for greater power.
The Sith rely on their passion for their strength. They think inwards, only about themselves.
And the Jedi don't.
The seduction to the dark side was made very easy by Palpatine. He plays the puppet master just perfectly.
What was a very simple good versus evil has now become about how good people can turn evil.
I'm not the Jedi I should be. I want more. And I know I shouldn't.
It's interesting how it was always about Luke. He was the sort of hero and it was about his journey, but actually now we realise that the whole thing it's all been about Darth all along. And I think it's a great way to explore a very fundamental idea that, you know, you kind of born as an innocent and then life and experience turns you and changes you, and before you know it, you've turned into Darth Vader.
Sort of see the visual of me encapsulated in this suit was phenomenal. I mean, very empowering, you know, to sort of be in Darth Vader. It makes you feel very beastly.
And I loved Vader. I just loved him from day one. And I remember, I think I asked George, I said, are you going to cut to two pilots saying, oh, that's the Dark Lord of the Sith, he's the most evil man in the galaxy, but, you know, a little exposition here. He goes, meh. He's all in black, and we'll put some scary music in there.
I still think the iconic black helmet caped, he was the epitome of all evil, everything that was bad. He was the favorite baddie, you know. And there was something chilling about that breathing noise that, as a kid, made you frightened.
What have you done with those plans?
We intercepted no transmission. I have early memories of like imitating Darth Vader's voice before I even knew what Star Wars was about.
If this is a consular ship, where is the ambassador?
When we were in the recording studio, I had this fantasy of being like the new James Earl Jones. And they said, "Who's this?" And I went,
They must have hidden the plans in the escape pod. Send a detachment down. There'll be no one to stop us this time. Yes, sir.
So I'm not really. I'm sort of more of a little, I don't know what I am. A tiny little pea compared to him.
If it wasn't the terrors of the dark side we had to deal with, it was disgusting creatures like those Jawas. I simply can't abide them, you know. But then, most of the species we had the misfortune to meet were woefully oblivious to the rules of etiquette. Much like my little friend here.
In the Star Wars universe, it felt like people lived there, and therefore the aliens had to have their own kind of history and backstory, and to this day, all the aliens in the prequels, there's huge backstories for all of them.
Aside from the look of the characters and the environments, the other thing about a believable universe is language.
They wanna wonder.
Oh my. Do you wanna let go?
There's dozens of languages in it. Not only is there Huttese, the Tusken Raiders speak a language. Chewbacca, there's Wookiee, which is completely indecipherable.
He still communicates, but he does it in different ways.
Well, you said it, Chewie.
I'm sure they went back and studied all kinds of remote and inaccessible languages.
Wattanese is gibberish.
Chat wara. Ting mi chasa hopa.
But it was scripted in English, and it said sort of, in brackets above it, to be spoken in Wattanese, and then the whole thing goes on in English. Didn't really bother to talk to George about it before we arrived on set that day, and nor did he bother to talk to me about it, But no, he was like, just make it up, As long as it doesn't resemble English, you're okay.
Mi boska da Shmi Skywalker.
Not just languages, but dialects of the languages. So it was that authenticity you got when you went into the cantina for the first time. And let's face it, some of the aliens are a little bit rubbery, but you don't break out of kind of that world because it feels like a real place.
I just loved it. I don't like you in funny language that you'd never heard before.
Nathan.
He doesn't like you.
Sorry. I don't like you either.
I don't like you either. You just watch yourself.
It feels like, the dishes are dirty and, that alien doesn't get on with that alien.
Una puta solo. La latosa solo. La lavanda solo.
Yes, Greedo. As a matter of fact, I was just going to see your boss.
I wish I'd got to speak a language. It would have been good.
That's absolutely right. And a big turnout here.
I was working in Edinburgh doing the festival, doing stand-up, as was a friend of mine named Scott Capurro.
They wanted a loudmouth American. They needed two. So they first went to Greg, obviously, because he's the loudest of all Americans ever.
The casting agent, Robin Gerland, came to see our shows and then asked us if we wanted to audition for the pod race announcers.
Prani Champio to Pixolito, Sapalva!
Well, the character apparently is a Doug. He's a Doug. Uh-oh. All my language was in Huttese.
Yoko to banta pudu.
With a little bit more anger.
Yoka to banta pudu.
And I said to him, I said, what does pudu mean?
He said, well, we could actually, couldn't say shit for the censors, but, all right.
Pudu.
Look, here he comes.
We went auditioned here in London, and the woman was lovely, American casting agent, and they didn't really have a script. They knew what they wanted, but they hadn't written anything. And so Proops just fired off about 30 hilarious lines, and they cast us both. And they used a lot of what Greg came up with, like things like,
I don't care what universe you're from, that's gotta hurt. Oh, I don't care what universe you're from, that's gotta hurt.
So Bulba's pod racer, that sound in that pod, that kind of diesel kind of...
R2 and I have served many owners in our time, from young Master Anakin to Captain Antilles. But we especially admired Master Luke. And it seems that the whole of the galaxy thought that he was rather dashing too.
I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you.
The who? The 10 to age of 7. It was the argument of I want to be Luke Skywalker. When you got to about 11, you thought, no, don't. Look at the air. How did he get through secondary school?
I had a little teensy-weensy platonic crush on Luke, like everybody else in the audience, I'm sure.
Luke's nice and looks lovely, but I think Han's the man for me.
I'm mad about the boy.
He was a bit mean, he was telling Princess Leia, you want to kiss me.
You like me because I'm a scoundrel. There aren't enough scoundrels in your life.
I happen to like nice men.
Nice man.
Very nice.
When I screen tested with Harrison, I figured he's got to be the leading man. I'm just a punk kid. I'll probably be his sidekick, running and getting him coffees and whatnot.
Well, how many more systems have to get blown away before you have no place to hide and are forced to fight? Don't you realize what's going on?
Well, what was so clear was what the idea was of the character relationships. Mark was the callow youth, and I was the smartass, and we each had a clear section of turf to explore.
What do you think of her, hon?
Trying not to, kid.
Good.
Still, she's got a lot of spirit. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think a princess and a guy like me?
No.
They both liked the same woman, but then Luke found out it was his sister.
The joke was, there is an attractive girl in the galaxy. That's the good news. The bad news is she's your sister. So, oh!
Thank goodness they didn't snog. It was just a peck. Do you know what I mean? That would have been weird.
Good luck.
I love Princess Leia. I love the hair. Who doesn't?
I worked at school with my hair and those things like that, and I got slagged off. And I was picked on for being a nerd. I really thought I was cool as anything. What a twat. She was a typical tomboy. Although she didn't look like one, she just definitely had the air of one. Who wouldn't want to be her?
I wanted to be Princess Leia. Who else?
I don't know who you are or where you came from. But from now on, you do as I tell you, okay?
She got to order and bark at people and tell them what to do.
Look, your worshipfulness, let's get one thing straight. I take orders from just one person, me.
So one day you're still alive?
Princess Leia was just sort of really feisty and grumpy and mouthy.
I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board.
Charming to the last.
I got one outfit for the first movie, and as George taught me, there is no underwear in space. Instead of that, there is gaffer tape.
But I think there are a couple of bits where they weren't taped down, and I remember thinking, oh.
I used to say we should just make up a contest on the call sheet as who's going to rip it off. But we didn't do that.
Frankly, I always felt there was a dearth of sex slaves in the movie, and I was very excited when Jabba had her on a leash.
I was into the chain thing as well, the fact that she was chained up, and she was practically naked.
I think I probably had a little erection.
I got to kill Jabba the Hutt, but I was still much more concerned about the slave girl outfit and what I was going to do about exercise.
I don't remember Princess Leia in a gold bikini. Was it underneath something? Something that was see-through?
A bit skimpy, wasn't it?
Oh, sexy, please.
Gold bikini. Wow, I don't remember a gold bikini. Are you pulling my leg? No?
Yes, we do make a fine team, don't we? When you behave yourself, that is. Just you watch your language, and watch this.
You name it, I've got it. I have the original Millennium Falcon, the AT-AT, I've got Hoth Wampa and Luke.
Got an R2-D2 telephone, which works, a real one.
I did have the lightsaber, which was my big birthday present. I did love it, and then my brother found out it was a perfect weapon to hit you with, because he could really, really beat you with it, and it stung like mad, but it didn't leave a bruise.
$10 million of the little figures have been sold so far.
Han Solo, he's in there, and he's my favourite goodie.
In fact, there are now a lot more of these galactic characters in circulation around the country than there are children.
No one until Lucas and Star Wars had thought there was that much business in toys. That's why when Lucas gave back some of his director's fees and they signed over the merchandising rights, and Fox kind of laughed and went, ha ha, we've got you. And of course, Lucas has made billions.
Whatever profits the filmmakers, Lucasfilms have made, the spin-off industry in Star Wars toys has doubled it.
To put a perspective on it, by 1983, we'd sold worldwide over 300 million Star Wars toys, which is just incredible.
We were very lucky in that Star Wars came along at a time when the toy companies were looking for something that could generate a whole long line of products.
One of the big innovations which isn't really talked about is the fact that until Star Wars, all dolls were 12 inches high. One of the reasons why they became so popular is they went down to 3 3/4 inches so kids could put them in their pockets. The simple reason they did that was if they'd been 12 inches, the Millennium Falcon would have been about 20 foot.
I'm somebody that already had collected toys and comic books and goofy things like that. So I was the one that said, hey, you guys, our faces are on the back of cereal boxes and we're masks. And Harrison was all like, great. And, you know, Carrie's all, what do they make my hair look like?
You know, we signed to wear a likeness, so when I look in the mirror, I have to pay George a couple of bucks. You're not really famous until you're a Pez dispenser. But, you know, you sort of realize I'm not really famous. Princess Leia is. And I look like her. And owe George a couple of bucks.
It doesn't look quite as frightening there, does it? It's like he's just come to the realisation he's not going to get that job at the bank. How close together is his ankles? How camp is that? It will not do. I cannot run a Death Star under these conditions. He should have a little leg that lifts up so he can do tantrum.
I let the kids play with them because I knew they'd be collector's item, but I thought, you know, they loved them so much, and how would I really mess with their minds if I said, no, let's put that up on the shelf because it's going to increase in value and it'll pay for your college education. Of course, now they're looking through price guides going, why'd you let me give the Princess Leia doll a haircut? It's worth $800 in mint. So you can't win for trying.
Please excuse us whilst we go for a recharge. Then we will tell you all about Master Yoda, midichlorians, and the Force. Midichlorians?
This is exciting. I tell you what,
Don't point that thing at me there, Governor. Ho, ho, ho.
Now, let me recall, we've introduced you to droids, the Sith, oh, and some ghastly creatures. But now it's time to meet the greatest Jedi of them all, Master Yoda.
Character who speaks all backwards is a work of complete and utter genius.
It's not that easy being green. Spend each day the color of the leaves. When you
Put that down. Now eat it. Hey! It's my dinner.
Yoda's just the epitome of knowledge. He just knows everything.
He's the all-knowing little green frog.
It's not easy being green.
Horrible little creature, the Emperor would say.
In terms of him being a puppet, I don't know, because my granddad wasn't to that size, so to me there were people that looked like that anyway.
Yoda was sort of the secret weapon of The Empire Strikes Back. He wasn't part of the publicity package, and the idea was the audience would discover him. We knew we had to create a character that wasn't just a man in a suit.
When I had first discussed Yoda with George, there was a possibility that Yoda would be 9 feet tall with a big beard, you know, powerful. George had even tried, I think, a trained monkey, but none of it worked. And then the makeup man, he said, "Can I try it?" And so he went off for a couple of weeks, and he came back, and he had a sheet over something. And he stood next to it, and he pulled the sheet off. I said to myself, "This is ridiculous." He did a self-portrait.
Well, I got a funny face, that's my own face, and on top of that, I'll put Einstein's wrinkles all over it. In those days, Einstein is the most intelligent man on earth, you know, and that's how he came about.
When finally somebody told him, "You know, this looks very much like you," he said, No, I use Kirshner's head, which is ridiculous. It doesn't look like me at all.
When 900 years old you reach, look as good you will not.
It was perfect. It was ideal for what we needed. But we were very worried about how he would come off on the screen, because Yoda has to act with human beings.
Always with you what cannot be done.
I would do anything to meet Frank Oz. I do think that Yoda's probably his most amazing character ever. One of the most fully developed and fascinating characters I've ever seen in any movie.
He's not ready. Yoda.
I used to do Muppets, and sometimes with characters, it takes a long time to get them. But this one all of a sudden just hit. I just saw it, and I knew who Yoda was.
I'm not afraid. You will be. You will be.
You will be. You will be. Sorry.
The actual physical puppet was not completed. It was being made. So I never really saw a finished character until the morning of the shoot. But it wasn't Stewart's fault. It was who made it. It was just that it was so new that nobody had done that before. It was a big undertaking.
I don't believe it. That is why you fail.
I had no trouble believing. You know, I mean, you look at it, you hear Frank's interpretation of the voice. Oh, hungry are you? And you're there.
In George's mind, he'd always wanted to see Yoda running and jumping and then fighting. So when Attack of the Clones came along, we got the nod in computer graphics here at ILM to create a completely digital Yoda.
It's going to be pretty important that he move fast enough to where we can barely see him, because then it'll all be credible.
The audiences up to this point had only ever seen Yoda as this wise, very fragile and frail sage. To make the creative leap with them that Yoda actually was this action hero, I was really worried.
Master Yoda.
Count Dooku.
The fight between Dooku and Yoda has become one of the most famous in cinema history. I even got an award for it.
I was in New York for the midnight screening, and people just freaked out in the cinema.
It was the London premiere in the Odeon Leicester Square, and there was the most tremendous uproar.
It's bizarre when you're 33 years of age and you're grabbing a cinema seat and going, yes!
He's like, I always wanted to see what Yoda would look like when he was young, you know, full of health and at his peak and at his prime.
You worry about convincing yourself you got something cool, but really you're way off base. It was a relief. It's like, okay, good. You know, we didn't mess up Yoda.
Fought well you have, my old Padawan.
Now, in spite of my advanced programming, there are many subjects in the galaxy that are quite beyond my capacity. Human behavior, the irrational actions of my eccentric little counterpart, but most mystifying of all, the power of the Force.
What is the Force?
And may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you. May the Force be with you.
It's an energy that combines us, brings us all together, and enriches our lives. Much like Trisha, but in an invisible form.
Stretch out with your feelings.
Well, I wish I had Luke Skywalker's Force, because I'd win a hell of a lot more matches.
They could use their mind and their inner strength to control things.
The Force is your energy.
It's a way of using, perhaps, the negative qualities that we have in our darker moments. In other words, channeling anger.
It's the universal being that connects us all. I have no idea what the Force is.
It's energy. Surrounds us.
Well, scientifically, it's an assembly of midi-chlorians.
Midi-chlorians, what?
Midi-chlorians are a microscopic life form that resides within all living cells.
Midi-chlorians live in you.
Inside your cells, yes. And we are symbionts with them.
You are?
Life forms living together for mutual advantage.
Okay.
Without the midi-chlorians, life could not exist, and we would have no knowledge of the Force.
It's basically like having worms, but trendy.
If I could choose one Jedi power, it would be Jedi mind control.
Let me see your identification.
You don't need to see his identification.
We don't need to see his identification. We don't need to see his identification.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
These aren't the droids we're looking for.
You can go about your business.
You can go about your business.
Move along.
Move along.
Mind control.
Try that on a bouncer. Break your nose.
It's a connectedness to and with all the energy, not just of the Earth, but of every planet in every universe. It's a state of holiness.
All the Star Wars films do have moral codes. The whole role of mythology in history is to take adolescents, going through puberty, coming from being a child into an adult, and show them what the rules of society are, and to say these are the things that we think are good, these are the things that we think are bad for these reasons, and it's a way of kind of socializing people.
If you choose the quick and easy path, as Vader did, you will become an agent of evil.
That's a really good thing to communicate to kids, and brilliant to communicate it in such a simple way to 7-year-olds.
Don't give in to hate. That leads to the dark side.
What I loved about the idea of the Force was, it's as deep or as shallow as you, the viewer, want to make it.
You're all talk, Hamill. You never even finished Jedi school.
Give me that knife!
Oh, it's mine!
Homer, use the Force. The Force? The forks. Use the forks.
Oh.
Yes!
So, we have completed our story, and if you don't mind, R2 and I will shut down for a while. But let me assure you that we won't be deactivated. After all, you humans couldn't manage without us droids. So, Until next time, may the Force be with you. Say goodbye, Otto. Come along.
My love for Star Wars has remained constant even after my involvement. It still stems from what originally attracted me to the films, and to be a part of that has been pretty cool for me.
Star Wars gave audiences around the world a global subject of innocent pleasure.
Everybody, even 8-year-old kids, can recognize this as a sort of an adventure saga.
And there were no books to take the stories from. All of these 6 stories come out of the mind and the brain, basically, of one man.
Ultimately, Star Wars is a kind of modern myth, but what it really is an old myth in a new clothing.
It's really hard to be cynical about something that really inspires, especially young people. And they don't know how old these movies are because we're not sporting wardrobe or driving cars that really dates us. They can look at this thing and a 9-year-old thinks it's new.
I'm sad that it's all over, and it is the end of an extraordinary cinematic saga. 30 years.
There has to be a future.
What do I think the future holds? I've heard he's going to release them in 3D.
I think it'll probably be TV.
We're developing a TV show, an animated TV show that's called Clone Wars. It's about the adventures of our heroes during the Clone Wars. We're doing a 3D animation version of that. And then we're going to do a live-action show that's based on some of the incidental characters in the saga. None of the main characters, but some of the almost not noticeable characters.
Can you tell me who they are?
No.
Star Wars Episode 4
Vader was seduced by the dark side of the Force.
is this Sunday at 6 on Sky Movies 1.
And next on Sky One, we follow the journey of the crew of the Battlestar as they search for safety in the universe. It's the first part of the miniseries, Battlestar Galactica.